On today's video, we're going to be doing probably the biggest viewing guide I have done on this channel, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's morphin' time!
I wanna take you for a ride. I wanna take you for a ride.
Hello, this is Soundout here, and on today's video, we're going to be doing a viewing guide on how to watch the Marvel Cinematic Universe, also known as the MCU. This is going to be a three-part guide. We're first going to go through everything in release order, broken down phase by phase. We're then going to talk about the MCU's multiverse of projects that exist outside of the Marvel Studios and Marvel Television production circles. And then we will have a timeline order, so if you want to rewatch everything in the chronological order of when it takes place, I have a simplified version of that than what you can find on most places online. This is going to be in a similar format to the other viewing guides I have done on the channel, which you can check out for other franchises. This is going to be a huge one because despite the fact the MCU has only existed since 2008, it has so much material. And I know a lot of people are burned out in the fatigue of how many Marvel projects there's been in phases 4 and 5, but let me tell you, Phase 3 actually kicks the butt on all of them. There's 31 things that happen in Phase 3. There's a lot to talk about, and I will be talking about everything that is officially a MCU project that connects to the MCU. So if there is something here that you think should connect to the MCU that I somehow missed, leave it in the comments. But for the most part, I'm looking for connections. I left off the Hellstrom series because while it was a Marvel television series intended to be part of the MCU, it makes no references to the rest of the MCU, and the MCU never references it in any way. So because of that, I didn't include it, but pretty much everything else is here, and we're going to go through all of it together. So if you enjoy this type of video, please hit the like button, please hit subscribe and the notification bell, and please share this around. Marvel is doing so much in 2025 with the MCU. They're kind of going through all their backlog, so I thought this was a perfect time to kind of have a guide. And then adding to this guide, I'm also going to be breaking it down by story group. Because the thing is, you really shouldn't try to watch everything the MCU has put out. There's so much of it, it's a little overwhelming. I've been trying to work through, like for the Marvel Netflix shows, for example, for several years. It takes a while to watch everything, and you don't need to watch everything. I always say, go with what you're interested in. It's just like comics. You don't need to read everything, just read what you're interested in. So to help guide you along the way, I'm going to be talking about each project as part of a story group. The idea being, if you like the Avengers, here's the Avengers projects. If you like the cosmic stuff, here is that. It's a similar idea to what the MCU timeline guidebook has, where it has little icons to tell you what things are, but I came up with the story groups in my own head based on the fact I've watched pretty much everything the MCU's put out, so I have grouped everything up, so hopefully it's a little bit easier to follow. The idea being, oh, I like the storylines of the X-Men, where do I go for X-Men? That kind of idea. Also, the answer there is not very much within the MCU circle itself, but we'll get to that in the multiverse. Also, for those that are spoiler adverse, the main release order sections will not have spoilers. However, there will be some spoilers in the multiverse section in terms of characters that have returned from other productions that aren't made by the MCU, and there will be spoilers in the timeline section because I have to talk about certain things involved with that. But the main release order portion, no spoilers whatsoever. It is time to get into this. We cannot waste time. I'm going to be going over very simple terms what each of these projects is about, and I hope that it helps you in some way, and I really appreciate you for checking this video out. Put a ton of work into it. So let's begin with the release order. So we're going to be going through the release order. This will not include any of the multiverse things that are now part of the MCU. It's going to be starting where the MCU began in the Infinity Saga, Phase 1, Iron Man from 2008. This was the first Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, though at the time they weren't exactly planning for it to be so. It just was kind of like, can we make an Iron Man movie? Marvel's still on the rights to Iron Man, and then see if it's successful and we can build from it. But they were smart enough to tease some things to a larger universe. This movie sees the hero debuts of Tony Stark Iron Man, James Rhodes, as well as Phil Coulson, and it also introduces some secret characters in the now famous post-credit scene. A lot of these movies feature credit scenes that are either in the middle of the credits or at the very end of the credits. It's become sort of famous, and some have been more effective than others. I'm not going to get into the details of all of them for the sake of time. This is also the kickoff of our Avengers story group. This is leading into the Avengers films and out of the Avengers films. The Avengers story group is the story of the Avengers. Now, our next film is The Incredible Hulk from 2008. Now, this is a movie that is actually produced and owned by Universal that they kind of slipped into the MCU at the very last minute. Its post-credit scene is, in fact, what connects this movie to the MCU, while otherwise it is standalone. This saw the debut of Bruce Banner, also known as the Hulk, as well as General Thunderbolt Ross, who will be a major player later on. The main story here is that Bruce Banner is on the run while he's trying to control the powers of the Hulk and has to face off with the fearsome Abomination. Naturally, this is part of the Avengers story group. Now, really starting to kick things into gear is Iron Man 2 from 2010. This saw the debut of James Rhodes as War Machine, Natasha Romanoff as Black Widow, as well as Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D.'s first proper appearance. This is going to feature a story where Tony Stark has to fight threats to take over his Iron Man technology. Naturally, it's part of the Avengers story group. In 2011, we have Thor. This sees the debut of Thor Odinson, Sif in the Warriors 3, Jane Foster, and Clint Barton, also known as Hawkeye. This is the story of Thor and how he was banished to Earth and had to reclaim his powers in the end. This is, of course, part of the Avengers story group. The Marvel one-shot The Consultant is a short to sort of explain the post-credit scenes from The Incredible Hulk, which didn't make much sense in the overall context as things went on. This is a conversation between two different S.H.I.E.L.D. agents explaining how they sort of worked with General Ross in terms of wanting to work on the Avengers project. In 2011, we got Captain America: The First Avenger, a movie debuting Steve Rogers, also known as Captain America, as well as Peggy Carter and Bucky Barnes. This is showing the story of Captain America during World War II, fighting the evil Hydra and Red Skull. This is part of the Avengers storyline, as well as the Infinity Stones storyline, showing our first glimpse of the power that will rule the universe. The Marvel one-shot, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to Thor's Hammer, is a short film showing Phil Coulson's journey to go catch Thor's hammer, as we saw in the first Thor movie. It's kind of a fun little short. It's not super consequential, but it's really good. And in 2012, all these plot lines converged into the Avengers. The heroes we've been introduced to so far have to team up to fight Loki and his invading army from space. And the cool part here is we get introduced to S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Maria Hill, as well as the Avengers as a concept in general. This is an important story beat for the Avengers story group, as well as the S.H.I.E.L.D. story group and the Infinity Stone story. Working as an epilogue to that movie is Marvel one-shot Item 47. This is a short film released in 2012 where a couple finds a piece of technology left over from the battle from New York, and S.H.I.E.L.D. has to intervene to find it. And this is part of the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. story groups. This also kind of works as a pilot idea for an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV series. So now, with the success of Phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as well as the Avengers film, Phase 2 begins to see sequels and expansions on the storylines of the individual heroes and the team as a whole, as well as the MCU as a concept. Starting off, we have 2013's Iron Man 3. Iron Man is attacked by the Ten Rings organization and its leader, the Mandarin. This is part of the Avengers storyline as well as the Ten Rings storyline, one of the slowest burn storylines we'll see here. The 2013 Marvel one-shot Agent Carter is a short film showing Peggy Carter in her time after the events of Captain America: The First Avenger. Now she's trying to adapt to the new world. She fights drug dealers and misogyny in the workplace in a nice short, kind of showing off the prowess of the character. This would work as sort of a pseudo-pilot for the Agent Carter TV series that would come later. However, there are some continuity hiccups between this and the show itself. It wasn't a thing they were thinking about super heavily when they were doing either project. This was mostly for fun, and then they made a whole TV show out of it. Also in 2013, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 1. This sees Phil Coulson and a team of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents investigating threats to the universe in a sort of weekly procedural thing with some nice serialized storytelling. This introduces to us agents Melinda May, Daisy Johnson, Leo Fitz, and Gemma Simmons. This is part of the S.H.I.E.L.D. story group, and it is focused on the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. specifically and how they react to the rest of the MCU. Episode 8, The Well, takes place in the aftermath of Thor: The Dark World, which we'll talk about next. Episode 15, Yes Man, is a crossover with Sif from the Thor movies. And episode 17, Turn, 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 is directly affected by the events of Captain America: Winter Soldier. Also released in 2013, Thor: The Dark World is a sequel to Thor, which sees Thor having to team up with Loki to fight Malekith and the evil accursed elves. This is part of the Avengers and Infinity Stones storylines, as it does introduce some important elements. The Marvel one-shot All Hail the King short film was released in 2013, and this sees the Mandarin after the events of Iron Man 3 and what he's been up to. It's also really connected to the Ten Rings storyline more so than the Avengers storyline. Released in 2014, Captain America: The Winter Soldier sees the debuts of Bucky Barnes as the Winter Soldier, as well as Sam Wilson as Falcon. When the mysterious Winter Soldier attacks S.H.I.E.L.D., Black Widow and Captain America have to fight to find out the truth behind the events going on. This is very important for the Avengers storyline, but very, very important for the S.H.I.E.L.D. storyline as it directly affects the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV series. In 2014, we got a movie not connected to the Avengers, Guardians of the Galaxy, introducing us to Peter Quill, Star-Lord, Rocket, Groot, Gamora, Drax, Yondu, and Nebula. This sees a ragtag group try to work together in order to save the galaxy, and hopefully make some money on the side. In terms of story groups, this is going to fit the Guardians of the Galaxy storyline as well as the Infinity Stone storyline. Beginning in 2014, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 2 saw the debut of Lance Hutter, Bobby Morse, also known as Mockingbird, Alfonso Mack McKenzie, and Lincoln Campbell as our new heroes. The main story of this season is that Coulson's S.H.I.E.L.D. team is dealing with the fallout of Season 1 and trying to regroup, as well as dealing with the emergence of a new race of people, the Inhumans. So for story groups, we have the S.H.I.E.L.D. storyline, the Avengers storyline, as this ties into Avengers Age of Ultron, as well as the Inhumans storyline. Episode 12, Who You Really Are, is another crossover with Sif from Thor, and episode 19, The Dirty Half Dozen, leads directly into Avengers Age of Ultron, and in fact, sums up what would be a plot hole if you just watched the Age of Ultron movie. In 2015, there was an Agent Carter miniseries which saw adventures of Peggy Carter working for the Strategic Scientific Reserve and going on undercover missions to discover new threats. This is, of course, part of the S.H.I.E.L.D. story group. In 2015, we saw the first of the Marvel Netflix shows, Daredevil Season 1. This is our debut to the heroes of Matt Murdock, also known as Daredevil, Karen Page, Foggy Nelson, and Claire Temple, as well as an ongoing villain, Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin. Matt Murdock is a lawyer who wants to do more good, so he becomes Daredevil in order to stop the Kingpin, and this begins our story group for The Defenders, your street-level heroes in New York City. Released in 2015, the second Avengers movie, Age of Ultron, introduces Wanda Maximoff, also known as the Scarlet Witch, Pietro Maximoff, also known as Quicksilver, and the Vision. This is the Avengers having their bonds tested when a program goes awry and creates the evil AI known as Ultron. And this is definitely connected to the Avengers story group as well as a little bit of the Infinity Stone story group. Later in 2015, we had Ant-Man, introducing us to Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man, Hope Van Dyne, Hank Pym, who was also Ant-Man, and Janet Van Dyne, who was also the Wasp. Ex-con Scott Lang is recruited to become the new Ant-Man in order to save the world from an upcoming threat. This movie is connected to the Avengers story group, but also starts the Ant-Man story group. The Ant-Man characters kind of go off on their own. That doesn't really connect to most of the Avengers stuff, so that's kind of why there's two story groups. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 3 began airing in the fall of 2015, introducing us to Elena Rodriguez, also known as Yo-Yo, also known as Slingshot. This is continuing the Inhuman storyline that started in Season 2, as well as other new threats that Coulson's S.H.I.E.L.D. team must face. So this is going to be your story groups of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Inhumans. And then rounding out 2015 as well as Phase 2 is Season 1 of Jessica Jones. This introduces us to Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Trish Walker. This season saw private investigator Jessica Jones uncovering her own past while discovering new threats, especially that of Kilgrave, who can control people with his words. And this is part of the Defenders story group, which is also building to something new. Now, something I want to touch on before we enter Phase 3, the biggest phase of the MCU so far. The earlier phases, as we start to see these TV shows be introduced, we have Agent Carter, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Daredevil, Jessica Jones. Those 4 shows were produced by Marvel Television, with Daredevil and Jessica Jones being produced for Netflix. And the way these kind of worked was that they would interact with the movies, they would reference the movies would never reference them or interact with them. And that's why it kind of had this idea back when the MCU was new, that, oh, if you just watch the movies, you got this big old connected story, you don't have to watch anything else, which is something that changes later. But as we're going to see with Phase 3, they really went hardcore with the TV shows because Marvel Studios was producing movies, Marvel Television was producing TV shows, and they went from being on 2 networks to several. So strap in, it's Phase 3 time. Kicking off Phase 3 is Agent Carter Season 2. This is a little bit longer of a season that saw Peggy Carter traveling to Los Angeles to investigate possible nuclear weapons. This is, of course, part of the S.H.I.E.L.D. story group. Next up, we have Daredevil Season 2, also from 2016, debuting Elektra Natchios as well as Frank Castle, aka The Punisher. This sees Daredevil continuing his mission to save Hell's Kitchen, this time encountering the Punisher as well as the Hand. This is naturally part of the Defenders story group. In May of 2016, we had Captain America Civil War, seeing the debuts of T'Challa, also known as Black Panther, Io of the Dora Milaje, and Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man. The main story here is that Captain America and Iron Man are on opposite sides of a conflict involving the United States government's plan to regulate superheroes. This is part of the Avengers storyline and the Spider-Man storyline. In 2016, there was a short film called Team Thor to kind of explain where Thor was during Civil War. This is not a canon short, but it is kind of funny because it introduces Thor's roommate Daryl, who is canon because he shows up in a later Thor movie. So it's a variant timeline, but it's not meant to be canon. It's kind of meant to be more tongue-in-cheek. The next Defenders series was Luke Cage. Season 1 debuted in 2016 and introduced us to Misty Knight, as well as seeing the return of Luke Cage and Claire Temple. And in this season, Luke Cage is fighting those that want to take over Harlem. This is part of the Defenders story group. Next up, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 4 from 2016. This is a very layered season. This saw the debut of Robbie Reyes, aka Ghost Rider, into the MCU, which is really, really cool. And we have 3 arcs for this season. Episodes 1 through 8 is Ghost Rider, which of course is the S.H.I.E.L.D. team discovering the existence of Ghost Rider, as well as the evil Darkhold. The second arc, the LMD arc, deals with a life model decoy that goes out of control. And the third arc is the Agents of Hydra arc, which I'm not going to tell you about because that would be spoilers. Story group wise, this is connected to the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. storyline, as well as the new category, Mystic Arts, because of the use of the Darkhold. And speaking of Mystic Arts, Doctor Strange, released in 2016, saw the introduction of Stephen Strange, aka Doctor Strange, as well as Wong. The story here is that Stephen Strange loses the use of his hands and seeks mystic arts as a solution to them, eventually having to stop evil. This fits into the story groups for both the Mystic Arts as well as the Infinity Stones. The web series Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Slingshot is focused on Yo-Yo Rodriguez as she's trying to decide what to do about the Sokovia Accords, and it does take place mostly in flashback, but the story begins and ends at a point that takes place after Season 4, Episode 8 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. In 2017, there was a second part to Team Thor, yet another non-canon special about Thor and his roommate. Then in 2017, we had Iron Fist Season 1, seeing the debut of Danny Rand, aka Iron Fist, as well as Colleen Wing. In this story, Danny Rand returns to New York City after being presumed dead, and he has to use the powers of the Iron Fist to defeat the Hand. This is of course part of the Defenders story group. Kicking off summer 2017 was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, seeing the debut of Mantis. The Guardians find out about Peter Quill's lineage and have to grapple with that, as well as multiple enemies that they have made along the way. This is naturally part of the Guardians of the Galaxy story group. Next we have Spider-Man Homecoming, seeing the debut of Ned Leeds as well as MJ. While trying to protect his neighborhood, Spider-Man discovers that the Vulture has bigger plans than he can handle. Will Iron Man help him, or is the calls coming to deaf ears? This is part of the Spider-Man story group. This is also a Sony movie, so it may not be available in the ways that other Disney movies are. It's done by special arrangement with Sony that Spider-Man can be in the MCU. Next, we have the Defenders miniseries from 2017. This is seeing Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, and all their friends and allies working together to stop the Hand from destroying New York City. It is the Avengers, but it's the street level, so they're the Defenders. Next, we have the Inhumans miniseries, which debuted 2 episodes in IMAX theaters originally before airing on ABC. This is seeing the debuts of Black Bolt, Medusa, Karnak, Gorgon, Triton, and Crystal. As Inhumans continue to appear on Earth, as seen in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the Inhuman royal family grapples with how to deal with that, but also dealing with a coup that's coming from within the palace. This is, of course, part of the Inhuman story group. Winter 2017 saw Thor Ragnarok, the 3rd Thor movie, which saw an introduction of Valkyrie and Korg. The story here is that as Hela threatens to destroy Asgard, Thor is lost on the world of Sakaar, where he finds the once missing Hulk. This is of course tied into the Avengers and the Infinity Stone storylines. Next up we have The Punisher Season 1. Frank Castle comes out of hiding and gets involved with a conspiracy tied to his past. This is of course part of the Defenders story group, though it's a little bit more of an offshoot. It doesn't connect as directly to the other shows, but there are supporting casts that carry forward. Starting an initiative to have young adult series in the MCU, The Runaways Season 1 introduces Alex Wilder, Nico Minoru, Chase Stein, Carolina Dean, Gert Yorks, and Molly Hernandez. These 6 teenagers discover that their parents are evil and they run away from home to try to stop them. This also starts our Runaways story group. This is a show that is definitely connected to the MCU with a lot of styling and a lot of location usage, but it's definitely further offshoot than even the Defenders series are. Next we have Season 5 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. starting in 2017. This saw the debut of 2 new characters in the form of Enoch as well as Deke Shaw. Coulson's S.H.I.E.L.D. team is stranded on a destroyed planet and they have to find their way home. And there's a lot of twists and turns in that I can't say here for the sake of spoilers. This is of course part of the S.H.I.E.L.D. story group. In 2018 we got Black Panther, seeing the debuts of Okoye, Shuri, Nakia, and M'Baku. After T'Challa returns home after the events of Captain America Civil War, he is to become King of Wakanda. However, someone threatens his throne. This is naturally part of the Avengers story group. The next non-canon short film, Team Daryl, is another comedy sketch that is non-canon, but does involve Thor's roommate Daryl, who who will be canon later on. Sometimes things are weird. Season 2 of Jessica Jones came out in 2018. This saw Jessica recovering from the events of the Defenders, as well as going into more mysteries within her past. And then we start to see one of the biggest events, Avengers Infinity War. This film, released in 2018, sees Thanos make his play for the Infinity Stones and to wipe out half the universe. This involves the story groups of Infinity Stones, Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers, Spider-Man, and Mystic Arts. Basically everything in the movies. It doesn't really tie into the TV shows. Like, if you're just watching Daredevil and nothing else, it's not going to tie into Daredevil, but it pretty much pulls in everything from the movies so far. The second young adult series, Cloak and Dagger's first season aired in 2018, seeing the debut of Tyrone Johnson, also known as Cloak, as well as Tandy Bowen, aka Dagger. These two very different people have a chance encounter that changes their life forever. This is also part of the Runaways story group, as we'll get into later. Season 2 of Luke Cage sees him struggling with his own self-identity while dealing with bigger threats to Harlem. Can he stay who he is while triumphing at the end of the day? It's of course part of the Defenders story group. The next movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp, sees the proper debut of Hope Van Dyne as the Wasp, as well as the introduction of Agent Jimmy Woo. While on the run from the events of Captain America Civil War, the Ant-Man family are trying to figure out how to access the quantum realm. This is going to follow these storylines for the Avengers as well as Ant-Man. Iron Fist Season 2 released in 2018 and saw Danny Rand grappling with who must become the true owner of the immortal Iron Fist, him or someone else. Naturally part of the Defenders story group. Season 3 of Daredevil deals with the fallout from the Defenders, and especially the fallout of Season 2 of Daredevil, and grappling with Daredevil once again having to work together with his allies to take down the Kingpin. Naturally part of the Defenders story group. Season 2 of Runaways in 2018 is the continuing adventures of the Runaways trying to stop their evil parents and expanding and learning about their powers. Punisher Season 2 sees Frank Castle go up against Jigsaw, seeking revenge after the events of the first season. The 2019 film Captain Marvel introduces us to Carol Danvers, also known as Captain Marvel, and she discovers her own identity and the truth behind how she got her powers. This is part of the Avengers storyline as well as the S.H.I.E.L.D. storyline. Season 2 of Cloak and Dagger would see the continuing adventures of Cloak and Dagger, though sadly their last adventures on their own because that was their last season. And in 2019, Avengers Endgame was the big climactic finale to the Infinity Saga's main storylines for the Infinity Stones, the Avengers, Ant-Man, Spider-Man, Mystic Arts, and Guardians of the Galaxy. After the events of Infinity War, what are the Avengers to do now? This is the big culmination of all the prior movies, and it's quite an event. But Phase 3 not over yet. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 6 sees Coulson's S.H.I.E.L.D. team come face-to-face with a familiar-looking foe. This is part of the S.H.I.E.L.D. story group. And also in 2019, Season 3 of Jessica Jones would not only be the last season of Jessica Jones, but the last of the Marvel shows on Netflix. This is also continuing Jessica's own trials and tribulations with members of her family in her past. Acting as an epilogue to Avengers Endgame is Spider-Man Far From Home, another Sony-produced movie that Disney does not own. This movie sees Spider-Man just wanting a vacation in Europe, but Nick Fury has other plans for him. This is connecting to the Spider-Man and Avengers storylines. There also was a short film called Peter Parker's To-Do List. This is using deleted scenes from Far From Home, showing Peter getting ready for his trip in Europe. Then we have Season 3 of Runaways, the last season of Runaways, and the last season of the young adult corner, the Runaways corner. This sees the Runaways trapped in a dark realm. It connects, of course, to the Runaways storyline, but also the Mystic Arts storyline involving the Darkhold. And adding to that, episodes 7 and 8 are crossover with Cloak and Dagger, bringing the two shows together. And then in 2020, the final season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Season 7, sees Coulson's S.H.I.E.L.D. team uncovering mysteries while traveling through time and trying to stop those who want to destroy things from the very beginning. This is naturally a part of the S.H.I.E.L.D. story arc. And that concludes Phase 3, as well as the Infinity Saga. The reason why it's all called the Infinity Saga is because the main storyline is the Infinity Stones leading into Avengers Endgame, and all the other shows are working around that. Now, of course, because the MCU does continue past this, Phase 4 will begin the Multiverse Saga. So the Multiverse Saga naturally is about the multiverse. A lot of these projects involve the multiverse, different realities from the one we know, different universes and different connections. This will not be talking about prior non-Marvel Studios productions that are in the MCU's multiverse. That's in the next section, and you don't want to miss that. But let's talk about the MCU projects for Phase 4, 5, and 6, part of the Multiverse Saga. Kicking off Phase 4 was WandaVision, the very first Disney Plus miniseries. This was produced by Marvel Studios as opposed to a separate division, though that will change later. It's not something we need to worry about here in this video. but this was kind of a big deal because movie characters like Wanda Maximoff and the Vision are now in a TV series. And this sees the introductions of Monica Rambeau, as well as Billy and Tommy, the sons of Wanda and Vision. This is a series that revels in mystery. How is all of this happening? Why does Wanda's life look like a sitcom? Is anyone trying to help her inside of it? All mysteries to be unraveled throughout the series itself. This connects to the Avengers as well as the Mystic Arts storylines. The next series is The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. This sees Sam Wilson and Bucky Barnes looking to protect the Captain America legacy after the events of Avengers Endgame. It also saw the debut of Joaquin Torres, who would later be the new Falcon. This is of course part of the Avengers storyline, but it does have kind of its own through line for Captain America. The first 3 Captain America movies, then Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Kind of works out nicely. And then in 2021, the first film of Phase 4, Black Widow, was released. This is a flashback movie set after the events of Captain America Civil War before Infinity War, and sees Natasha Romanoff reconnecting with her past, which includes Yelena Belova, her sister and a fellow Black Widow, as well as Alexei Shostakov, the Red Guardian. This is of course part of the Avengers story group. Our next series was Season 1 of Loki, introducing us to the Time Variance Authority, who deals with variant timelines and snuffing out possible branches to the universe. This is a time travel series. It takes place outside of time, but follows up on events from Avengers Endgame. And of course focuses on Loki himself as he gets involved with the TVA. Plus we're introduced to TVA agents Mobius and B-15, and this story group is different. As opposed to being Avengers, where the other Thor related stuff is, this is more in the multiverse camp. So it's starting the multiverse story group. Following this exploration into the multiverse is What If, Season 1. This sees alternate universes as observed by the Watcher, asking the question, what if? Except sometimes where the universes are Elseworlds and sometimes where they're connecting to other episodes. But the idea is it's supposed to be an anthology series. Though it does introduce us to the Watcher, as well as an alternate version of Peggy Carter known as Captain Carter. As in, what if she took the Super Soldier Serum instead of Steve Rogers? The next movie we have is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, introducing us to the new heroes of Zhu Shang-Chi, Zhu Xialing, and Katie. This movie sees Shang-Chi reconnecting with his lost family and learning some deep secrets along the way. This also connects us to the Ten Rings storyline that we started all the way back in Iron Man 3. I said it was a slow burn, but hey, they finally picked it back up. The next movie, The Eternals, introduces us to a group of beings who have existed on Earth for thousands of years, but are sworn to not interfere. They're known as the Eternals. They include Cersei, Icarus, Thena, Ajax, Kingo, Sprite, Phastos, Makari, Druig, and Gilgamesh. And of course, the storyline is that they have to interfere with some events going on, and there's a lot of mysteries within. This is going to start the Eternal story group, but it does connect to the Avengers storylines in some interesting ways. The next Disney Plus series was Hawkeye, introducing us to Kate Bishop, aka Hawkeye, and Maya Lopez, aka Echo. Clint Barton is retired from being Hawkeye and just wants to enjoy a quiet Christmas. However, his past comes to haunt him as he encounters Kate Bishop, the new Hawkeye. This is connecting to the Avengers storylines as well as the Defenders storylines, though I can't say why it connects to Defenders because that would be a spoiler. The next Spider-Man movie is 2021's Spider-Man No Way Home. Following the events of Spider-Man Far From Home, Peter Parker asks Doctor Strange to cast a spell, and that spell goes wrong, causing villains from other universes to appear. This has connections to the Spider-Man storyline, the Mystic Arts storyline, and the Multiverse storyline. There also is an extended cut, which doesn't happen in the MCU very often, that, Marvel's usually really opposed to that, but this was a Sony movie, and they released a More Fun Stuff cut that was released digital only in 2022. Still waiting for like a Blu-ray and a box set or something. Like, make me double dip, Sony, I'll do it. Our next series is Moon Knight. Stephen Grant seems to live a normal, ordinary life until he starts having unexplained gaps in his memory. We're also introduced to the character of Layla, an important figure in the show. This kind of stands alone and doesn't connect to anything at the moment, so it's going to be in the Moon Knight story group. Our next film, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, sees the debut of America Chavez, and in fact the plot revolves around her as Doctor Strange must protect America Chavez from those that want her power to be able to travel the multiverse. This is going to go into the Mystic Arts storyline as well as the Multiverse storyline. And if you're following the Wanda Maximoff Scarlet Witch storyline, that's where the Mystic Arts connection also connects her in, and that is important for this movie. Our next Disney Plus series is Ms. Marvel. Kamala Khan has always dreamed of being a superhero, but when she finally gets her own superpowers, what is she going to do, and how is she going to become a hero of her own? This is connected to the Avengers story group. Our next movie is Thor: Love and Thunder. This is the debut of Jane Foster as the mighty Thor, and in fact involves Thor leaving the Guardians of the Galaxy and investigating Gore the God Butcher, and then figuring out who now wields his mighty Mjolnir. Naturally, this is part of the Avengers story group, and the Guardians of the Galaxy are in it long enough I can say it's part of the Guardians of the Galaxy story group as well. I Am Groot Season 1 is 5 short films showing Groot in different misadventures over the years. Naturally, it's part of the Guardians of the Galaxy story group, and some might say these aren't canon because they're just little side adventures, but they're in the official timeline book, so they're canon. I'm not going to argue with the official timeline book on this one. Plus, there's nothing to make them not canon. Yeah, there's nothing to make them canon, but there's nothing to make them not canon either, so why not include it? Our next Disney Plus series is She-Hulk Attorney at Law, seeing the introduction of Jennifer Walters, aka She-Hulk. This is the story of lawyer Jennifer Walters, who wanted to have a normal life, was enjoying her time as a lawyer, but unfortunately an accidental blood transfusion with her cousin Bruce Banner results in her becoming She-Hulk. Now she has to grapple with being She-Hulk or being Jennifer Walters, or somewhere in between. Now, naturally, this is part of the Avengers story group, but she does have some crossovers with other storylines. Episodes 3 and 4 feature a crossover with Wong, and Episode 8 features a crossover with Daredevil, marking his big return into the MCU proper. Next, we have our very first Marvel special presentation, Werewolf by Night, released in fall 2022. This introduces us to Jack Russell, also known as the Werewolf, and Ted, also known as Man-Thing. A group of monster hunters gathered to honor one of their own, but something suspicious is underneath. Is one of them not a hunter, but in fact a monster? Only time will tell. This special is done in reference to classic monster films from the 40s and 50s and has a great classic vibe, being released in black and white. This starts a new story group in the form of supernatural characters. It doesn't connect all the way to the MCU, but is by far my favorite MCU project of all time, and I'll throw in a little personal bias just for this because I really appreciate the work done on this. And if you don't like black and white, they recolored the film into Hammer horror-inspired palettes for Werewolf by Night in color a year later, so you have options on how to watch this. It doesn't connect to the overall greater mystery of the MCU, but boy is it good. Our next movie is Black Panther Wakanda Forever, seeing the debut of Shuri as Black Panther, as well as the introduction of Riri Williams, also known as Ironheart, and Namor. After a tragic event leaves Wakanda reeling, they have to work together while being threatened by another kingdom. This is, of course, part of the Avengers story group. Then rounding out Phase 4 is the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, the second Marvel special presentation. This has the introductions of heroes Cosmo the Space Dog, who we'd briefly seen in prior versions, and the brand new actor I've never heard of, Kevin Bacon. So while the Guardians begin to settle on their new home on Nowhere, Mantis and Drax decide to go to Earth to get Peter Quill a Christmas present. This is, of course, part of the Guardians of the Galaxy story group. So now let's get to Phase 5, the phase we're currently in. It kicked off with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, released in 2023. This saw the debut of Cassie Lang as Stinger, and sees the Ant-Man family getting stuck in the quantum realm and having to escape, while also making sure they don't let out Kang the Conqueror. Story group-wise, this really fits more with the Ant-Man side of the stories as opposed to Avengers, so we're just going to put just Ant-Man, but also the multiverse, because Kang the Conqueror is a multiversal villain. Next up, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. This is the debut of Adam Warlock, as well as the Guardians trying to save one of their own from the disturbing High Evolutionary, while also dealing with the consequences from Infinity War. And adding to that, it does follow up directly from the Guardians Holiday Special. This is essentially the conclusion of the original Guardians storyline, so it is part of the Guardians of the Galaxy story group. The next Disney Plus series was Secret Invasion, which sees Nick Fury return to Earth to deal with the Skrull Uprising. This has connections to the Avengers storylines as well as the S.H.I.E.L.D. storylines. It also connects to the Skrull storyline that was started in Captain Marvel. Next up, we have another season of I Am Groot shorts. These, of course, are the Guardians of the Galaxy storyline. These are mostly taking place after Guardians Volume 2, still dealing with Baby Groot. Then we have the second and final season of Loki. This introduces us to the new hero character of Ouroboros, also known as OB, and is exploring the mysteries and the origins behind the TVA as Loki tries to figure out how to stop the timeline from imploding. Naturally, this is a key cornerstone of the MCU's multiverse story. Our next movie is The Marvels from 2023. This sees Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau, now known as Photon, and Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, getting cosmically entangled with their light-based powers. They must stop the villain that caused this, as well as save the entire multiverse. This is part of the Multiverse Saga, as well as part of the Avengers storylines. The second season of What If introduces us to new worlds and new stories that the Watcher is observing, as well as introducing a brand new character unique to the MCU, known as Kahori. And this is going to continue also some of the storylines that were in Season 1 into Season 2. Our next Disney Plus miniseries is Echo. It was released under the Marvel Spotlight banner, which is supposed to be stories that are disconnected from others. It is essentially part of Echo's story. It does have connections, though, to the overall Defender story. It spins out of Hawkeye, and it spins into Daredevil Born Again. And then we have the one movie from 2024 for the MCU, Deadpool and Wolverine. This is a movie that gives me an actual headache when we get to the multiverse section. But this movie started development as Deadpool 3. So this is actually the MCU debuts of Wade Wilson, also known as Deadpool, Logan, also known as Wolverine, and a bunch of other characters I can't say for the sake of spoilers. But this movie in and of itself doesn't take place primarily on the main MCU Earth. It primarily takes place on other Earths as well as other connections. It is connected to the multiverse storyline because there is connections with the TVA from the Loki series. It also is connected to a brand new X-Men storyline that doesn't really connect to other MCU things, but in fact connects to Fox's X-Men movies from the past, with this being the third Deadpool movie where the first two were produced by Fox when it was another universe. And that is all referenced and connected to in the story tissue of the movie. So because of that, all the connections and what movies it connects to that are outside the MCU, we will talk about with full spoilers in the multiverse section next. Also, the storyline of this movie is that Deadpool wants to save his own universe, and in order to do that, he has to find a new Wolverine. Unfortunately, he found the worst one. Our next Disney Plus series is Agatha All Along. Agatha Harkness encounters a mysterious teen, and they walk the witch's road with a new coven in order to gain mysterious power. But what is the truth behind this teen's identity, and how does this work as a sequel to WandaVision? That's all within the mysteries itself. But of course, this is part of the Mystic Arts storyline. Then we had a third and final season of What If, peering into more worlds and more realities, as well as concluding the Watcher's story. We also were introduced to the brand new revolutionary character of Birdie the Duck. You have to watch it to see it. The context is wild. So taking a page from What If, there is another animated Marvel series produced by Marvel Studios, officially part of Phase 5, but does not take place on the main MCU's Earth. It is in fact in another universe. It is Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Season 1. This is currently airing, so I'm not exactly sure how it 100% shakes out, but having seen enough of the episodes to know, this takes place in a similar Earth to what we saw in the MCU, but with significant and drastic changes. For example, instead of Spider-Man participating in the civil war between Iron Man and Captain America, Spider-Man sees it on a TV. That's the kind of differences we have here. There's a lot of allusions and homages that definitely set this within the MCU's multiverse, and I would have put it in the multiverse section if it wasn't officially part of a phase, according to the way that Marvel Television is releasing it. But it is officially an animated series, and it kind of works standalone. You don't really need to see the MCU stuff, but there's some cute nods and allusions if you have. There's characters that show up with their same actors from the MCU, and etc., etc. It's an MCU adjacent show that's officially part of the MCU. And now we get to projects that haven't released yet but are coming up soon. First of all, Captain America Brave New World. This movie is releasing the weekend this video comes out. It sees Sam Wilson as Captain America having to fight against the Red Hulk, and he's joined by Joaquin Torres as the new Falcon. There's also a lot of mystery and intrigue behind what is the truth, the matter, and everything, and I haven't seen it yet, so I can't give you a better summary than that. That's just based off of trailers. This is, of course, in the Avengers story group. Then after Captain America, we have Daredevil Born Again, which is going to be a new entry point into the Daredevil series. It's made in line with the original Daredevil show, but meant to be a new entry point. We're going to see the introduction of new characters like White Tiger, but the main conflict of Daredevil versus Kingpin will still be taking center stage. This series, of course, is part of the Defenders story group. Following Daredevil, the next movie will be Thunderbolts, asterisk. I don't know what the asterisk is for. But the thing is, the Thunderbolts is not the Thunderbolts from the comics, but something that kind of resembles the Dark Avengers. It's a team of heroes who are not heroes, who are trying to redeem themselves while they fight a powerful foe. Following that film, the next series will be Ironheart, following up Riri Williams' story from where we saw her last in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and seeing what it takes to create her own armor. Then kicking off Phase 6 will be the Fantastic Four First Steps. This movie is set on a different universe than the main MCU universe, and is in a 60s retro future inspired world. This will introduce new versions of Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, Sue Storm the Invisible Woman, Johnny Storm the Human Torch, and Ben Grimm the Thing. What threats they will face, including Galactus, we have yet to see, but this movie is going to start off a new phase. The story groups for this will be Fantastic Four, as well as the multiverse. Following this, we're going to get a couple shorter animated series. Eyes of Wakanda will be a 4-episode series looking at the history of Wakanda within the MCU and going into stories and mythologies therein. And then there will be the 4-episode Marvel Zombies series, which is going to be inspired by the zombie episode of What If, though not a direct continuation, and sees a world where zombie outbreak has caused heroes and villains alike to have to work together to survive. And then rounding out 2025 will be Wonder Man, which sees actor Simon Williams come into his own power as Wonder Man and become the hero he's always meant to be. And ironically, while it's Avengers connected, it also is 10 Rings connected. That is the slowest burn of a story arc, but I appreciate them keep going with that. Now, there are future MCU projects in the works, including new Avengers movies, but those haven't fully taken shape yet, nor been filmed, nor given proper release dates. They have temporary ones, but we're not worried about that so far. There's a lot on the horizon for the MCU, but that's not all. There is a whole multiverse that has now been connected thanks to the Multiverse Saga with pre-existing Marvel material. So with that said, that is the release order of the MCU. That is the end of the no spoilers section. There'll be light spoilers in the next section for the multiverse because they bring people in from other Marvel projects that were not MCU projects, and we're going to talk about all of them. Let's take a look at the MCU's multiverse.
I wanna take you for a ride.
And now we've come to the point in the video where this is going to feel like homework. As if the previous however long was not already homework enough, it's time to talk about the MCU Multiverse. Yeah, this is going to be fun. And as fun, I mean I went a little nuts trying to come up with the notes for this one, and you all have to suffer through it because we're doing this together. Okay, so first things first, how do I determine what is in the MCU multiverse? The simple answer is, it has to be referenced within the MCU itself. There is a bubble of the actual on-screen MCU media. I am not including any MCU side material like comics or tie-in video games because we didn't include those in the earlier section. We're talking about things that are connected to and referenced in the actual stories and dialogue within the MCU. That being said, there's a couple weird exceptions we're going to have to put in or not put in depending on how it goes. This is going to be a little nuts, and that's why I brought a visual chart for us to understand the multiverse together. Hooray, let's do this. First things first, Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. This is a series that ran from February 10th, 2023 to February 7th, 2025. Absolutely adore this series. We had 2 seasons, one of 16 episodes, one of 26 episodes, and some extra shorts and additional material. This series itself is not distinctively set in the MCU, but could be considered MCU adjacent, because we saw in the series Maria Hill, Dr. Bill Foster, Sam Wilson, Captain America, as well as a character I'm not going to spoil because he is in the last recent episodes, played by MCU actors or designed to look like they're MCU characters. So it kind of works in an adjacent space, and that's kind of what Moon Girl sort of sits in. It's not officially MCU, but it's not exactly completely separate from what we've seen. It's sort of in the way that some other cartoons we'll talk about in a moment have some inspirations from the MCU, but this one more so directly feels like it's kind of supposed to be a little bit of an adjacent thing. So how do we track this on the multiverse? Well, let's just say this is the MCU, which is Earth 616, or more accurately 19999. That's the MCU. So what we're going to do here is try to track things and how close they are to the MCU. So Moon Girl, a little bit further from the MCU, right there, covered Lunella's face. There we go. It's not in the MCU, but it's kind of close in a lot of ways. It doesn't feel that far off. All right, so for the next segments, we're going to be going into full spoilers of the MCU. So if you haven't seen phases 4 and 5 and you don't want to be spoiled about possible returning characters, skip ahead to the next segment. Wait, that's the timeline. That's also spoilers. We're just going to go into full spoilers here, so it's not going to get into plot details, but it will get into these characters show up in other things. It's just how we have to do this to continue tracking the multiverse. So first things first, we have Blade from 1998, its sequel Blade 2 from 2002, its sequel Blade Trinity from 2004, as well as the Blade TV series from 2006 that, while not starring Wesley Snipes as Blade, is intended to be in the same continuity as earlier 3 films. This little universe of Blade, it is part of the MCU's multiverse because Blade, or a variant of Blade, appeared in Deadpool and Wolverine, played by Wesley Snipes. So that means Blade goes on the multiverse chart. And in this case, it's kind of like over here where it's a little close because a variant did appear, but it's not like super integral to watching the MCU. Blade shows up, there's Blade, and there only is one Blade, and probably only ever will be one Blade. So next up, another easy one, Daredevil. So the 2003 Daredevil film featured Jennifer Garner's Elektra, which also includes the 2005 sequel/spin-off Elektra, starring Jennifer Garner's Elektra. Elektra did appear, or a variant thereof, in Deadpool and Wolverine, so it kind of canonicizes both movies, especially because they do reference Matt Murdock/Daredevil having been killed in Deadpool and Wolverine. So he does exist, and so does Elektra. So whether these are the exact versions from these movies, or they are versions that we saw or slight variants of them, it's in the MCU's multiverse. And much like Blade, it's kind of over here nearby, kind of connected. The 2005 film Fantastic Four and the 2007 sequel Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer both feature Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, who appeared in, or a variant of, in Deadpool and Wolverine, once again played by Chris Evans. So once again, we're going to put it kind of nearby, but not exactly close. Okay, so now we get into the fun part, which means a joke by Deadpool made my life more difficult. The Punisher. There have been 3 Punisher movies so far. 1989's The Punisher, starring Dolph Lundgren, 2004's The Punisher, starring Thomas Jane, and 2008's Punisher Warzone, starring Ray Stevenson. All 3 versions of Punisher are distinctively separate from one another, and because of that, they are 3 separate universes. The fun part here is that in Deadpool and Wolverine, Blade is holding a rocket launcher. They tell Deadpool they got it from Punisher, and that didn't specify which Punisher it was, to the point where Deadpool says, which Punisher? There's like 5 of them. Well, if you include these 3 plus the one from the MCU, John Barenthal, we only get to 4. Now, Deadpool could be referring to animated versions, but there's at least 3 of those, and there's also a video game, so sticking just to the live-action stuff, there's still 4. I'm not exactly sure where you got the 5. Deadpool may be messing with me to cause this all to go into turmoil. But because of that, and they are 3 separate universes, so naturally that means all 3 get to go on the board. We're going to put Dolph Lundgren here, we're going to put Thomas Jane here, and then we're going to put Ray Stevenson here. The fun part about this is that we can actually move Thomas Jane's Punisher closer because a variant of the villain known as the Russian appears as part of Cassandra Nova's forces in Deadpool and Wolverine, therefore implying that that version of the Punisher is the one they got the rocket launcher from. So the next one I'm going to bring up is the 1977 Hulk TV series, starring Bill Bixby as Bruce Banner and Lou Ferrigno as the Hulk. This is not going to go on the multiverse board, but it technically could exist within the MCU's multiverse. During She-Hulk Attorney at Law Episode 9, the opening sequence featured a parody of the opening to this TV show, the iconic narration and the montage, and it was instead Jennifer Walters' She-Hulk as opposed to David Banner and Hulk. So the thing is, it technically does exist as a reference. However, that sequence seemed to be a dream or a fourth wall break by She-Hulk, since both She-Hulk and Deadpool have fourth wall breaking abilities. I can't necessarily say this is in the MCU's multiverse, but it could be taken as evidence. It's just going to be floating for now until like Lou Ferrigno shows up and not playing the MCU's Hulk, but like his Hulk. It could happen. You never know anymore. Okay, so now we've gotten through what I would call the easy ones. Those are the easy ones. It's time for X-Men. So X-Men has been integrated into the MCU primarily so far by using the existing Fox versions or variants thereof. So for example, we had a Charles Xavier/Professor X variant in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. He was played by Patrick Stewart, who played him in some of the movies, but he had the gold hover chair from the comics/animated series. So it's kind of a variant where I can't say it's from any specific version, but it is a variant of Professor X. And then adding to that, we had Hank McCoy, aka Beast, show up at the end credits of the Marvels. And his design is more comics-based, but he's still played by Kelsey Grammer, who played him in X-Men The Last Stand and Days of Future Past. So because of that, it works as variants to bring this in. But then, of course, the biggest thing is Deadpool and Wolverine. That's ostensibly Deadpool 3, so that brings in Deadpool 1 and 2, which then further brings in the rest of the multiverse for the X-Men Fox universe, because we have Laura Kinney, aka X-23, or a variant, returning in that movie, and we also have connections to Logan and other prior films through clip usage in the story. I'm not using the behind-the-scenes montage from the end of Deadpool and Wolverine to add things into the multiverse. That's why I didn't mention Fantastic Four 2015, because that wasn't referenced in story, it was just referenced in a thing for the audience more so than the characters themselves. There wasn't anything connecting them in like Cassandra Nova's base, for example. And also, speaking of Cassandra Nova's base, a lot of the villains in her army are variants of villains from the X-Men movies. That being said, it doesn't include everything from the Fox universe. I'm just going to go through what was included. The other benefit is that because of Deadpool and Wolverine, we actually have an Earth number to work with. So for X-Men here, it's Earth number 10005. So this is going to be your X-Men universe. Now the thing is, there's multiple timelines in that universe. So we have 1 timeline, 2 timeline, 3 timeline, and some standalone material. So because of all this, it gets complicated. And I will say, in terms of the timeline, I worked this out for my X-Men viewing guide video, which you should also check out, because I'm not going to talk about all the X-Men animated shows in this segment. But the timeline for the Fox movies leaves a lot to headcanon. This is my personal headcanon in terms of what timelines fit together. So in terms of X-Men timelines, we have X-Men from 2000, followed up with X2, X-Men United from 2003, followed up with X-Men The Last Stand from 2006. That's the original trilogy of X-Men movies. X-Men First Class from 2011 is a prequel to those movies that does not have any contradictions. The Wolverine from 2013 is a sequel to The Last Stand. Then it also has X-Men Days of Future Past, which is from 2014. This works as a crossover between the present-day X-Men and the prequel X-Men, but then results in 2 separate timelines. Also, there's 2 different cuts of that movie, the theatrical and the Rogue cut that's extended. And then it leads us to the second split timeline, which starts at Days of Future Past, then goes into X-Men Apocalypse from 2016 and Dark Phoenix from 2019, and that's where that branch dies. And then we have the Deadpool timeline, which is timeline 3, the Deadpool movie, followed by the Deadpool No Good Deed short from 2017, Deadpool 2 from 2018, and then Deadpool and Wolverine from 2024. Added to this because of references between all the movies, X-Men Origins Wolverine from 2009 is a standalone timeline, as well as Logan from 2017. Those movies are all referenced within Deadpool and Wolverine or within the Deadpool movies to connect them all together, and I thought I could print out like a thing for every single one of them, but I decided, you know what? It's all X-Men at the end of the day. But it's there. It's its own universe, and we do know there's branch timelines within the universe, within the context of Deadpool and Wolverine. If you thought that was bad, it's time to talk about Spider-Man. And here we go with Spider-Man, everybody. So first things first, we had the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man played by Tobey Maguire. 2002 Spider-Man, 2004 Spider-Man 2, 2007 Spider-Man 3. A nice, easy trilogy. And we can put that straight on the board. It's a nice, concise, definitely its own universe. And because Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man did show up in No Way Home, I'm going to put it kind of close to the MCU because it did cross over pretty easily. Just a magic portal, not a whole TVA situation. But you see, we have a complication. That is Spider-Man, the new animated series from 2003. This 13-episode series was designed as a sequel to the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie. However, because of Spider-Man 2 and also contradictions in and of itself, it is a separate universe. And on top of that, it does have a variant of the version of Kingpin seen in the 2003 Daredevil movie. So it's definitely in this MCU multiverse. And while it's not a big part of it, it's a little offshoot from the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man universe, which is not the same as the Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man universe. We talked about that earlier. The next live-action Spider-Man we have is The Amazing Spider-Man from 2012 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 from 2014. This both starred Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man, and we can put him right on the board because him and his villains did appear in Spider-Man No Way Home, again, encircling the MCU a little bit here. Let's talk about Sony and the movies connected to Venom. So Venom from 2018 featured no MCU references, but in 2021, Venom Let There Be Carnage had a post-credits scene that led into Spider-Man No Way Home. The 2022 movie Morbius then had Spider-Man Homecoming's Vulture come from the MCU to the Venom universe and seemingly stay there. It's because of Spider-Man No Way Home, but it doesn't make that much sense. And then Venom The Last Dance from 2024 begins its movie spinning out of the events of Venom's scene from Spider-Man No Way Home, which came from the Spider-Man Let There Be Carnage scene, which means all of the Sony Spider-Man movies that aren't Madam Web or Craven are automatically part of the MCU's multiverse, and because they're kind of close to Spider-Man, they get to join the board. There's certain projects I really love until I have to do videos like this, and one of them is the Spider-Verse movies. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse from 2018 had no connections to the MCU, but brought in a lot of elements of the overall Spider multiverse that we've seen established in comics and cartoons. There was also a Spider-Ham short called Caught in a Ham that was released in 2019, and then in 2023 we had Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Here's how it all connects to the MCU. First things first, it references the events of Spider-Man No Way Home in a line of dialogue which also puts the correct Earth 199999 Earth number. We have Amazing Spider-Man appearing in the movie from archive footage used from the Amazing Spider-Man movies. We also had a variant of Prowler played by Donald Glover, who played Aaron Davis in Spider-Man Homecoming, therefore being a variant of an MCU version, meaning it's part of the MCU Multiverse. And so because of that, it's time to put it on the board, but kind of a little further away, because it's not like super duper connected. But then it gets better, because in the movie, Spider-Man Unlimited appears. So that series, also in the MCU's Multiverse. Spectacular Spider-Man appears, also now in the MCU Multiverse, and the Spider-Man Insomniac video game version means all of those games are now in the MCU Multiverse. There's also a 2024 short called The Spider Within, which Sony couldn't legally release on their own without being a charity drive event because they didn't realize that their contract said that they can't release anything under 40 minutes with the name Spider-Man attached to animation. That's Disney's job. Good job, Sony. You're probably thinking, that's gotten out of hand, hasn't it? We're not done yet! So during the events of What If Season 3, we saw a version of Storm where she was wielding Mjolnir and was now the Goddess of Thunder. Here's the thing, she's designed to look like the version of Storm that appeared in X-Men 97. She is voiced by Allison Seeley-Smith, who voiced Storm in the X-Men animated series and X-Men 97. Which means, with all the evidence presented to me, the X-Men animated series is part of the MCU Multiverse. That series ran for 5 seasons and is excellent. There was also X-Men 97, its follow-up. Naturally part of the same universe. 1 season is out as of 2024. There are 2 more seasons in production. And because of shared voice actors as well as overlapping stories and a general consensus these all took place in the same world, that also means we have to include the Marvel Action Hour shows, Iron Man lasting 26 episodes, Fantastic Four lasting 26 episodes, Spider-Man which lasted 5 seasons, and the heavily underrated Incredible Hulk that only lasted 21 episodes. That is the Marvel Animated Universe. In fact, that becomes its own little section here. So the Marvel Animated Universe is part of the MCU Multiverse as well. Now you're probably wondering about one little show, since I've talked about other things because they resemble it, they look like it, they reference it. You're probably thinking of the 2015 Guardians of the Galaxy animated series, which distinctively looks like the MCU version in every possible way, and you're expecting me to put it up here as like an MCU adjacent thing. No, we're not. That is not happening, and let me tell you why. Because if you include the 2015 Guardians of the Galaxy series, you also have to include Marvel's Spider-Man from 2017, which also featured crossovers of characters between those 2 shows and the final 2 seasons of Avengers Assembled. If it includes the final 2 seasons of Avengers Assembled, that means that there is an alternate universe that is the first 3 seasons of Avengers Assembled, which it also includes crossovers with Hulk and the Agents of Smash, as well as some direct-to-video features and Ultimate Spider-Man. And why would we not want to include Ultimate Spider-Man? Because Ultimate Spider-Man showed up in the Spider-Verse comic event, which would then bring in the entire Marvel multiverse, which includes some DC comics as well, and this is convoluted enough as is without bringing all this into it. So with that all said, this is your Marvel MCU Multiverse. This is everything that wasn't produced as a Marvel Studios, Marvel Television production that is part of the grand tapestry of the MCU at this point. I hope you're happy because this drove me a little bit nuts trying to put it all together. Okay, so for the timeline order of the MCU, complete spoilers, I have to specify certain details. In terms of my sources, number 1 source is the official timeline of the MCU book, you know, the official Marvel Cinematic Universe timeline book. This goes like year by year events wise, not like production wise, and has like not a lot of nice like overlay pieces, but it goes through the entire timeline. So I use that as my main reference. I used some fan wikis and some online sources for the TV shows that aren't included in that book, and I used the Disney Plus timeline order for everything that came after Phase 4, because that book stops at Phase 4. Let's begin. So we're just going to go year by year. 1943, Captain America the First Avenger. Its main story, the opening and ending take place later. 1946, the Agent Carter one-shot, Agent Carter Season 1 and Season 2. Now, the way I rectify this is that the Agent Carter one-shot has continuity problems, but there's a lot of time travel going on in the MCU, and I think the timeline shifted a little bit on some of the events, and that was an earlier version, and then the Agent Carter version is the version we see after Steve went back to return the stones. Then we jump all the way to 1995 for the main story from Captain Marvel. Then in 2008, Iron Man. 2010, we have Iron Man 2, The Incredible Hulk, Marvel one-shot The Consultant, Thor, and Marvel one-shot A Funny Thing That Happened on the Way to Thor's Hammer, all happening in the same week. Eventful times. 2011, Captain America First Avengers opening scene and its ending scene, the present-day events, whereas the main story took place in 43. In 2012, The Avengers and Marvel one-shot Item 47. Now's where things get complicated. In 2013, we have Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 1, Episodes 1 through 7, then Thor the Dark World, then Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 1, Episodes 8 through 12, then Iron Man 3, then Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 1, Episodes 13 through 14. In 2014, we have Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 1's Episodes 15 and 16, Marvel one-shot All Hail the King, Captain America the Winter Soldier, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 1, Episodes 17 through 22, since that's the direct result of Winter Soldier. Then Season 2, Episodes 1 and 2. Then we have Guardians of the Galaxy, I Am Groot Season 1, Episode 1, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, I Am Groot Season 1, Episodes 2 through 5, as well as I Am Groot Season 2. Taking place in 2015, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 2, Episodes 3 through 5, Daredevil Season 1, Jessica Jones Season 1, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 2, Episodes 6 through 19, Avengers Age of Ultron, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 2, Episodes 20 to 22, Ant-Man, Daredevil Season 2, Luke Cage Season 1, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 3, Episodes 1 through 8. In 2016, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 3, Episodes 9 and 10, Iron Fist Season 1, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 3, Episode 11 through 19, The Defenders, Captain America Civil War, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 3, Episodes 20 through 22, the main story of the Black Widow movie, ignoring the post-credits scene, Black Panther, The Inhumans miniseries, Spider-Man Homecoming, and The Punisher Season 1. In 2017, we have Doctor Strange. Now, this is the final point in the story for Doctor Strange because the movie takes place over a couple years, so I just kind of went with where the movie ended to place it because that's kind of the best way to watch it. We have Cloak and Dagger Season 1, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 4's Ghost Rider arc, Episodes 1 through 8, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Slingshot, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 4's LMD arc, the Episodes 9 through 15, and its Agents of Hydra arc, Episodes 16 through 22, Jessica Jones Season 2, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 5, Episodes 1 through 10, Luke Cage Season 2, Iron Fist Season 2, Runaways Season 1, Daredevil Season 3, Cloak and Dagger Season 2, Runaways Season 2, Runaways Season 3, Episodes 1 through 4, Thor Ragnarok's main story, ignoring the post-credits scene, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 5, Episodes 11 through 13. All of those, like, back half of that, all just kind of take place at the same time. So I kind of just broke it down as, like, watch these chunks of S.H.I.E.L.D. and watch these seasons of shows because it's just all happened at the same time. In 2018, Punisher Season 2, Jessica Jones Season 3, Ant-Man and the Wasp main story, ignoring the post-credits scene, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 5, Episodes 14 through 18, Runaways Season 3, Episodes 5 through 10. Then we have the mid-credits scene from Thor Ragnarok, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 5, Episodes 19 through 22, Avengers Infinity War, Ant-Man and the Wasp mid-credits scene, Captain Marvel's mid-credits scene, and the Avengers Endgame prologue prior to the time skip. In 2019, the only thing we saw take place was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 6. Now, I do know there is a continuity issue with Season 6 and 7 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in that they don't reference Thanos, the snap, half the population of the universe vanishing. It just seems like it didn't affect this, and that is because of a production reason that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. wasn't told what was going to happen in Infinity War and Endgame, and that's why they start time traveling in Season 7. So the thing is that in 2019 you had Season 6, and in 2020 you have Season 7. They could be an alternate timeline because S.H.I.E.L.D. spent a whole 5th season like traveling to an alternate future and then coming back. They may not have come back to their original one, and they exist in a world where the snap never happened and the Avengers were killed by Thanos. It's a possibility. Like Doctor Strange said, there's billions of those out there. Then continuity-wise, 2023, Avengers Endgame, Loki Season 1 and Season 2, and WandaVision. 2024, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Spider-Man Far From Home, Peter Parker's To-Do List short takes place during that movie, The Eternals, Spider-Man No Way Home, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Black Widow's post-credits scene, the one with Yelena, Hawkeye. Then in 2025, we have She-Hulk Attorney at Law, episodes 1 through 3, Moon Knight, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, Echo, She-Hulk Attorney at Law, episodes 4 through 9. She-Hulk kind of takes place while all those other things are taking place. There's overlapping events. Miss Marvel, episodes 1 through 3, Thor Love and Thunder, Miss Marvel, episodes 4 through 6, once again, overlapping events. Werewolf by Night, and the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. And then in 2026, so far, this is the timeline-wise Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Secret Invasion, The Marvels, Deadpool and Wolverine, because there is connections to stuff happening at the TVA, so it does have a timeline placement, even though it primarily takes place on Earth 10005, and then Agatha All Along. Where the rest of the 2025 slate for the MCU fits, do not know yet, because they aren't out yet. Also, things like What If and Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man take place in different universes distinctively, so they aren't part of the timeline. But that's the timeline watching order. If you want to go for the most insane version of watching everything in its most chronological sense, and I streamlined it, I hope, in the best way possible. I have no idea how long this video was, so we're going to make this outro quick. If you enjoyed this, please hit the like button. I really appreciate it. It helps the video immensely. Subscribe to the notification bell for more videos like this. I put a lot of effort into this. I've done a ton of viewing guides. This was by far the most difficult because the MCU pumps out stuff like crazy. Like, there may be 50 years of Super Sentai, but they do like one show a year. The MCU is doing like several all at once. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you so much. And tell me in the comments. The code word is Daredevil is soon, and we're very excited. That will be let me know that you made it all the way to the end of the video. Really appreciate it. Always come back and look at the reference here. If you want to continue the conversation, join our Discord server in the link below. Also, you can join as a channel member and get perks like early access to videos, member-exclusive live streams, and other cool perks. Let's give some special shout-outs to our channel members. Special shout-out to our channel members: Captain Tears, Spin-54, Toma K, MasterBen95, Jamie's World, Forever1000, Super Shaddix Boom, Capybara Enjoyer, Kyle Birdwell, Crestfallen Thoughts at Midnight, Vangel Giorgio, Mr. Smelly Potato, Star Warrior Robbie, Oni Onichan, B-Tub, Gang1, and Starwho. Thank you all for your support of this channel. You can find me on social media at Blue Sky and Discord at Soundout12. You can find my wonderful graphic designer on social media and Discord at DarkClaw643. You can find Hero Club at hero-club.com for entertainment, news, and more. And until next time, this is Soundout saying, can't wait to update this in a year or so, because it's certainly not stopping anytime soon.